The ocean at night is a place of wonder and mystery. Imagine standing on the deck of an old wooden ship, the air thick with the salty scent of the sea, the waves rolling gently beneath you. Above, the sky is vast and endless, a velvet blanket scattered with countless stars. The moon hangs like a lantern in the heavens, its silvery glow dancing across the dark surface of the water. Everything is quieter at night. No bustling harbors, no cries from seabirds, just the steady rhythm of the waves and the whisper of the wind through the sails. For pirates, this was the world they knew so well. Night was both friend and foe. Darkness concealed their movements, allowing them to stalk merchant ships or slip past naval patrols unnoticed. Yet, the same darkness also hid reefs, islands, and sudden storms that could destroy their fragile wooden vessels. The moonlit seas were as dangerous as they were beautiful, a place where every decision could mean survival or ruin. In this story, we journey back to that age of sail, when pirates ruled the Caribbean and beyond. We'll explore how they found their way across the vast, empty ocean when the sun disappeared, how they relied on the stars, the wind, and the whispers of the waves themselves. As you listen, let the rhythm of their world carry you. Imagine the creak of the timbers, the faint glow of lanterns on deck, and the endless horizon stretching into the night. This is the story of how pirates navigated the seas at night. A tale of courage, cunning, and the quiet magic of the moonlit waters. For pirates, the night was not only a backdrop of stars, and silence it was a powerful weapon. In the daylight, a pirate ship was easy to spot. Dark sails against the horizon, the glint of cannons along the deck, the suspicious absence of a merchant flag. Merchant ships and naval patrols could see them coming and had time to escape or prepare for battle. But under the cover of night, the ocean became a cloak. Darkness turned even the most fearsome pirate vessel into a shadow, blending with the endless waves. Night sailing gave pirates the advantage of surprise. Imagine a richly laden merchant ship, its crew resting after a long day's journey. Lanterns flicker dimly on deck, casting small circles of light into the vast darkness. They feel safe, believing that no danger could approach unseen. Yet, miles away, a pirate crew trims its sails to catch the wind, moving silently through the black water. No fire, no lantern, no sound but the gentle creak of wood. By dawn, the merchant ship may find a black flag rising on the horizon with no chance to flee. But sailing at night was not only about attacking, it was also about survival. Pirates often had to evade heavily armed naval warships, far stronger than their own vessels. To escape capture, they relied on the night to disappear into the waves, slipping between islands or hiding in coves. Darkness gave them freedom. It gave them a chance to live another day, to strike again. Still, the night was dangerous. Without clear vision, reefs could tear through a hull, and storms could rise without warning. Yet pirates chose to risk these dangers because the rewards were too great. Gold, spices, silks, and rummel waited for those bold enough to hunt under the stars. In the pirates' world, night sailing was not optional, it was essential. It was the art of balancing fear with fortune, using the shadows of the sea as both shield and sword. The sea at night is unlike anything on land. In daylight, sailors could at least see the waves around them, the horizon stretching in the distance, and perhaps a faint outline of islands or clouds to guide their way. But once the sun sank beneath the horizon, the ocean became a vast black void. Pirates sailing in these hours were surrounded by uncertainty. Every creak of the ship's timbers, every sudden splash in the water, every gust of wind carried with it an edge of fear. For many sailors, the night was filled with superstition. Some believed sea monsters lurked just beneath the waves, rising only under cover of darkness. Others whispered of ghost ships, phantom vessels doomed to sail forever, appearing suddenly on moonless nights. To the weary pirate crew, exhausted from weeks at sea, these tales often felt real. A shadow on the horizon could be a warship or a spectre. The groan of the wind through the rigging could be a warning, or simply the sound of the ship breathing. Even without legends, the dangers were real enough. The Caribbean and Atlantic waters were dotted with coral reefs, sharp as knives and nearly invisible at night. A single mistake in steering could rip open a ship's hull, sending it to the bottom in minutes. Storms were another terror. On calm nights, a sudden shift in the wind could grow into violent gales. Without the light of the sun to see approaching clouds, pirates were often caught by surprise. Yet, despite this fear, pirates continued to sail. They learned to use their fear as fuel, listening carefully to the ocean, reading the faint glow of the stars, watching the way the sails pulled in the wind. To them, the night was not just danger, it was opportunity. They embraced the unknown, daring to travel where others would wait for daylight. And so, the fear of the night became part of a pirate's identity. They were not only thieves of treasure, but also masters of shadows, creatures who thrived in the mysteries of the dark ocean. For pirates, navigation was more than a skill, it was survival itself. The seas stretched endlessly in every direction, with no roads, no signposts, and no landmarks once the coast disappeared behind them. Without careful navigation, even the most fearsome pirate crew could drift hopelessly, lost in the middle of the ocean, their supplies dwindling and their hopes fading. Pirates depended on navigation for many reasons. Treasure ships rarely followed predictable routes. Merchant captains often changed their courses to avoid being caught, sometimes sailing farther from the coast or through dangerous waters. A pirate crew that could not track and predict these paths stood little chance of intercepting them. Navigation was the invisible thread connecting pirates to their prey. But it wasn't only about finding victims. Pirates also needed to return safely to hidden harbors and secret coves where they could rest, repair their ships, and divide their plunder. These hideouts were often well concealed, tucked between reefs, mangroves, or shallow waters. Only a skilled navigator could guide a ship safely back to such a refuge under the cover of darkness. The navigator on a pirate vessel was among the most important members of the crew, while the captain commanded authority and the quartermaster kept discipline. It was the navigator who ensured the ship reached its destination at all. A single error miscalculated distance. A star mistaken for another could doom the entire crew. Thus, pirates often sought out sailors with real experience, sometimes forcing captured navigators to join their ranks. On the moonlit seas, where shadows stretched long and the line between safety and disaster was razor thin, navigation was the pirates' greatest weapon. Without it, their cannons, their cutlasses, and their courage would mean nothing. Sailing by day and sailing by night were two completely different worlds for pirates. In daylight, the ocean was alive with movement. The sun revealed the waves, the outlines of distant ships, the colors of the sky that warned of approaching storms. The crew could work with confidence repairing sails, climbing, rigging, spotting potential prey across the horizon. Daylight was the time for open chase, for raising the black flag, for striking fear with a sudden broadside. Night, however, was another story. Once the sun slipped away, the sea became a place of mystery and danger. Lanterns could not be used freely. Too much light would reveal the ship's presence to others on the water. Crews moved more carefully, speaking in hushed voices, trimming sails to avoid making unnecessary noise. Where daytime voyagers relied on sharp eyes and distant signals, night voyagers relied on silence, instinct, and the stars above. The difference was not just in visibility, but also in strategy. During the day, pirates often pursued their targets openly, relying on their speed and ferocity. At night, they became hunters in the shadows, creeping close to their prey unseen. A merchant ship that might easily outrun pirates by day could be caught by surprise while its crew slept, waking only to the sight of cutlasses and pistols. Still, nighttime voyages were exhausting. Crew members had to take turns keeping watch, ensuring the ship stayed on course and no sudden danger approached. Sleep was limited, broken by the constant rocking of the ship and the fear of what might emerge from the dark horizon. The rhythm of a pirate's life was built on this cycle-busy daylight raids balanced against tense, uncertain nights. Day brought clarity, night brought concealment. Together, they shaped the dual nature of piracy, bold in the sun, secretive under the moon. Among all the tools pirates carried, none was more precious at night than the compass. Simple in appearance, just a small needle floating on water or fixed in a brass housing, the compass was the silent guide that never slept. By pointing steadily north, it gave pirates a sense of direction even when the world around them was swallowed by darkness. Before the compass, sailors relied only on landmarks, stars, or memory. But on moonless nights, when clouds smothered the sky, those methods failed. The compass was a miracle of certainty. Even if the sea raged, even if rain blurred the heavens, the compass needle continued to whisper the truth of direction. To a pirate crew slipping silently through enemy waters, that whisper could mean the difference between catching a treasure ship or drifting into disaster. Still, the compass was not without its mysteries. Pirates did not fully understand the science of magnetism. To them, The way the needle aligned itself to the unseen force of the earth felt almost magical. Some sailors treated it with superstition, believing it to be a gift of fortune or a curse if misused. Stories spread of compasses that led ships astray, pointing them toward reefs or into storms, as if bewitched. Despite the fear and fascination, pirates relied on the compass every night. It was often kept close to the navigator, protected from careless hands. By aligning it with the ship's heading, the navigator could chart a steady course, ensuring the vessel traveled in the right direction no matter how black the sea appeared. The magnetic compass gave pirates confidence to venture far from shore, into waters where stars might hide and landmarks vanished. With this tool, even in the darkest night, the pirate ship always knew which way to turn. Long before wristwatches or glowing clocks, sailors carried with them a clever little instrument called the nocturnal. To the untrained eye, it looked like nothing more than a carved disc of wood or brass with a few moving arms. But to pirates who dared the sea at night, it was a secret clock written in the stars. The nocturnal worked by using the positions of certain stars, most often the Big Dipper and Polaris, the North Star, by aligning the arms of the instrument with these stars. A navigator could tell the time of night with surprising accuracy. For a pirate crew, this was more than a curiosity. It was a way to keep order in the dark. Watches had to be changed on schedule, duties rotated, and speed calculated by time. Without knowing the hours, chaos could creep into the ship as quickly as the tide. Imagine a pirate leaning over the rail at midnight, the sea black as ink, holding the nocturnal up to the heavens. Around him, the crew dozes lightly, lanterns flicker, and the sails strain quietly against the wind. By reading the stars, he calls out the hour, marking the passage of time in a world without bells or towers. But, like all tools, the nocturnal had its limits. On cloudy nights, it was useless, and even a steady hand could falter on a rolling deck. Still, when the skies were clear, it gave pirates a sense of control over the mysterious night. It told them when to change direction, when to rest, and when to prepare for a dawn attack. To the pirates, the nocturnal was a symbol of balance, the blending of science and superstition, of human craft and cosmic guidance. In its turning arms, they held a piece of the night itself, a reminder that even the endless darkness of the sea had a rhythm, measured and steady, like the beat of a hidden drum. If the compass pointed the way, then the astrolabe revealed the heavens themselves. This ancient tool, shaped like a circular brass plate with a rotating arm, was a marvel of both beauty and function. To pirates, it seemed almost like a relic of sorcery and instrument that allowed men to read the language of the stars. The astrolabe's main purpose was to measure the angle of celestial bodies above the horizon. By lifting it to the sky and sighting a star or the sun, a navigator could determine latitude, the north-south position of the ship on the globe. For pirates, who often sailed far from familiar coasts, this knowledge was invaluable. It kept them from drifting aimlessly into unknown waters and gave them confidence to hunt trade routes with precision. But using the astrolabe was no easy task. It required a steady hand, sharp eyesight, and knowledge of the constellations. On a rolling pirate ship, with waves tossing the deck, even the best navigators struggled to keep it level. Many pirates preferred cruder, simpler tools. Yet those who mastered the astrolabe became highly prized members of any crew, for their skills meant survival and profit. The astrolabe also carried a certain aura of respect. Unlike the rough weapons and patched sails of a pirate vessel, it was a tool of scholars and astronomers, often stolen from merchant ships or naval officers. Holding one connected the pirates to a much older tradition of exploration, stretching back to Arab scholars, Greek philosophers, and medieval mariners. Under the starlit skies, when the waves whispered and the world seemed endless, the astrolabe gave pirates something priceless: the power to know where they stood in the great, dark emptiness of the ocean. Before the age of sextants, pirates relied on simpler wooden instruments to measure the heavens: the cross-staff and the backstaff. These tools may not have looked like much, just rods and sliding pieces of wood, but in the hands of a skilled navigator, they could unlock the secrets of the sky. The cross-staff was one of the earliest. To use it, the navigator placed the staff against his cheek and slid a crosspiece up or down until one end aligned with the horizon and the other with a star or the sun. The angle between them gave a measure of latitude, but it was a harsh method. Staring directly at the sun often left sailors with aching eyes, and on a rocking ship, accuracy was difficult. To solve this, the backstaff was developed. Instead of looking into the sun, sailors turned their backs to it. Shadows cast on the instrument allowed them to take measurements without burning their vision. For pirates, who often had no time for complicated mathematics, the backstaff was a more practical choice. It was easier, safer, and still gave the precision needed to chart a course. Both instruments were part of the pirate navigator's toolkit, often cobbled together from stolen supplies or crafted by ship carpenters. Though crude compared to modern technology, they represented the ingenuity of seafarers who refused to let the darkness or the vastness of the ocean keep them trapped. On starry nights, when a pirate leaned into the wind, holding one of these wooden staffs against the backdrop of the sea, he was doing more than just measuring angles. He was connecting his small ship to the cosmos itself, proving that even outlaws of the sea could master the language of the stars. Not every tool of pirate navigation was as elegant as an astrolabe or as clever as a backstaff. Sometimes the simplest instruments carried the greatest importance. Among these was the humble hourglass, a wooden frame holding 2 glass bulbs filled with fine sand. On a pirate ship, the hourglass was far more than a timekeeper. It was the heartbeat of the voyage. Each turn of the glass marked the passing of 30 minutes, a steady rhythm that helped the crew keep watch rotations, measure speed, and maintain order in the endless cycle of day and night. The navigator often kept several hourglasses running, their sand falling like a silent, steady reminder that time on the sea never stopped. Linked to the hourglass was the method known as dead reckoning. By recording the ship's speed, direction, and time traveled, pirates could estimate their position even without the sun or stars. They measured speed with a log liner rope knotted at regular intervals, with a piece of wood tossed overboard. As the wood dragged behind, sailors counted how many knots of rope slipped through their hands in the time of one glass. This gave them their speed in knots, a term we still use today. Though imprecise, dead reckoning was often the only way to keep track of a ship's progress on dark or stormy nights. Pirates would plot their rough position on stolen maps, trusting the memory of their navigators and the steady fall of sand. But errors were easy to make. Currents could push the ship off course. Winds could shift unexpectedly, and hourglasses could run unevenly. A miscalculation of just a few miles could mean missing a treasure-laden ship or striking a reef in the night. Yet despite its risks, dead reckoning was a lifeline. With an hourglass, a rope, and the discipline to track each turn of sand, pirates could sail boldly into the dark unknown, confident that they were still tethered to a sense of place haven, if it was only an estimate. The ocean is vast, silent, and without markers. How could pirates know how fast their ship was moving across such an endless expanse? The answer lay in a simple but ingenious method: the log line and knots. A log line was nothing more than a long rope with knots tied at regular intervals. At the end of it, a flat piece of wood, the log, was attached. When thrown into the sea, the log would drag slowly behind the ship while the rope unspooled. A sailor timed the process with an hourglass, calling out as the sand ran down. The number of knots that slipped through his fingers in that short period gave the ship speed. It was a rough system, but surprisingly effective. From it came the familiar nautical term we still use today: knots, to measure speed. For a pirate navigator, knowing the ship's pace was essential. It allowed him to calculate how far they had traveled in the hours or days since their last sight of land. Combined with dead reckoning, the log line was a lifeline in the endless night. But the method was not without flaws. Strong currents could pull the log faster or slower than the ship itself, throwing off the reading. The sailor holding the rope might count too quickly or too slowly, especially if fatigue clouded his senses in the dark hours of the night. Yet for all its imperfections, it gave pirates a sense of progress, something to grasp in the black emptiness of the sea. Picture it, a sailor bracing against the rail in moonlight, the rope burning through his calloused hands, the ship slicing forward over the waves. Behind him, the navigator waits, counting breaths with the hourglass, listening to the shouted numbers. The crew may be rough men, hardened by battle and salt, but in that moment, all their trust rests on the rope, the knots, and the fall of sand. This was the rhythm of the sea measured not in clocks or calendars, but in knots and grains of sand, passing quietly through the long night. When the sun slipped beneath the horizon and the sea turned to ink, the pirates lifted their eyes to the heavens. The stars, brilliant and countless, became their companions, their guides, and sometimes their only comfort on the vast, empty waters. The night sky was not just a beautiful canvas, it was a living map. Pirates, like all sailors of their age, knew the constellations by heart. They learned which stars rose and set at certain times of year, how to follow their arcs across the sky, and how to use them to hold a steady course. The stars whispered directions in their silent language, and the navigator listened. In the northern hemisphere, the Big Dipper pointed always toward Polaris, the North Star, steadfast and unmoving. For pirates hunting the busy trade routes of the Caribbean, this single star was a constant ally. To the south, the stars shifted, strange and unfamiliar, forcing pirates to adapt, to relearn the sky with each voyage. But stars gave more than direction, they gave reassurance. To weary men, battered by storms or haunted by fears of capture, the stars were proof that the world still had order. No matter how wild the seas became, the heavens above followed their eternal rhythm. The same stars that shone over Spain, England, or Africa glimmered over the Caribbean waves, connecting home and horizon in a shared light. Imagine a pirate leaning on the rail of his ship, the cool night air brushing his face, watching Orion's belt blaze above the water. His ship may be hunted, his crew restless, his future uncertain, but the stars remain constant companions in a world of danger. For pirates, the sea at night was never truly empty. It was filled with ancient lights, guiding, comforting, and reminding them that even outlaws could find their way by the stars. Of all the stars that pirates followed, none was more faithful than Polaris, the North Star. It did not wander across the heavens like the others. It did not rise or set, nor vanish at dawn's first light. To the pirate navigator, Polaris was a steady beacon, fixed above the northern horizon, pointing always to true north. Finding Polaris was simple once you knew where to look. By tracing a line from the two stars at the edge of the Big Dipper's bowl, sailors could follow it upward until they reached a lone, bright star, shining steady in the dark. There it stood, a watchman in the sky, unmoving as the other constellations circled around it. For pirates sailing the Caribbean or along the American coast, Polaris was a guardian. By measuring its height above the horizon with tools like a cross-staff or astrolabe, navigators could determine their latitude, how far north or south they had drifted. Even without instruments, a practiced eye could tell if they were too far off course simply by how high Polaris stood in the night sky. To the crew, Polaris became more than a star. It was a symbol of certainty in a life filled with chaos. While storms could rage, winds could shift, and battles could be lost, the North Star never faltered. It shone for pirates and kings alike, offering guidance without judgment. Picture a pirate ship sailing silently through a moonless night. The deck creaks, the sails strain, and the men whisper nervously. Yet above, Polaris gleams like a lantern hung in the heavens, steady and sure. To follow it was to trust in the order of the cosmos, to believe that even in lawless seas, there was still directions, still a path to follow. For pirates, Polaris was more than a star. It was a promise that no matter how dark the night became, there would always be a way forward. Polaris was a faithful guide in the northern seas, But for pirates who ventured south of the equator, that beacon slowly disappeared. As the ship crossed into new waters, Polaris sank lower and lower on the horizon until, one night, it vanished entirely. To a crew used to relying on its steady glow, the loss was unsettling. The heavens themselves seemed to have changed. The southern skies were filled with unfamiliar constellations. Pirates who had grown up under northern stars now found themselves staring at strange patterns, shapes they could not name. Where was the compass star to point them home? Instead of Polaris, sailors in the south had to look for different guides, like the Southern Cross, a brilliant constellation of 4 stars that pointed toward the celestial south. But unlike Polaris, it did not mark an exact point. It required careful measurement, practice, and an experienced eye. For many pirate crews, this was a challenge. Some relied on captured navigators who knew the southern heavens. Others learned by trial and error, sailing cautiously until they grew familiar with the new stars. The risk was high. A mistake in reading the skies could carry them hundreds of miles off course into hostile waters or barren seas with no land in sight. And yet the southern skies also carried their own kind of wonder. New constellations rose bright, strange, and wild, reminding sailors that the world was far larger than their home ports. To pirates seeking fresh hunting grounds along the coast of South America or Africa, these skies offered both danger and discovery. Imagine a pirate ship gliding across a black ocean under the unfamiliar Southern Cross, the crew whispering about stars they did not know. Fear mixed with awe. The heavens were no longer the same, but still, they offered guidance to those bold enough to learn their secrets. For pirates, losing Polaris did not mean losing direction. It meant adapting, conquering a new sky, and proving once again that even in the most foreign of waters, they could find their way. The stars were faithful companions, but often it was the moon that ruled the night. Its silver glow spilled across the waves, painting the sea with shifting ribbons of light. For pirates, moonlight was both blessing and curse, an ally one night, a betrayer the next. On a clear, moonlit night, the sea was transformed. Pirates could see the outlines of their sails, the shape of the rigging, even the faint silhouette of distant ships. The ocean sparkled as if alive, each crest of a wave glowing like molten silver. With such light, the navigator could work with ease, measuring angles, checking instruments, and steering confidently. It was as though a lantern had been hung in the heavens just for them. But moonlight also carried risk. A bright night meant pirates could be seen as well. Merchant ships and naval patrols kept a sharper watch when the moon was full, knowing shadows could betray an approaching vessel. 2 pirates hoping to strike unseen, too much moonlight was dangerous. Many preferred the cover of a new moon, when the night was black and the sea swallowed even the faintest outlines of their ships. Still, the moon offered more than visibility. Sailors learned to read its phases, using its waxing and waning to mark the passage of time. A thin crescent rising after sunset signaled one thing. A full moon high at midnight meant another. The moon was a clock as much as it was a lamp. For pirates, moonlight navigation was a delicate balance. They welcomed its glow when threading dangerous channels or steering near reefs, but cursed it when trying to sneak upon their prey. And yet, whether loved or feared, the moon could not be ignored. Picture a pirate ship gliding across calm waters under a glowing full moon. The crew works in silence, their faces pale in the silver light, their shadows stretching long across the deck. The night is beautiful, almost peaceful, but every man knows that beauty hides danger, and the same moon that lights their way might also reveal them to their enemies. For pirates, the moon was never just a light in the sky. It was a companion, a challenge, and a reminder that even in darkness, the heavens watched their every move. The greatest challenge of night sailing came not from the darkness itself, but from the clouds that swallowed the sky. On those nights, the stars vanished, the moon disappeared, and the heavens offered no guidance at all. To a pirate crew that relied on celestial lights, the blackened sky felt like betrayal. Without the stars, there was no Polaris to mark the north, no Southern Cross to guide in southern waters, no constellations to trace across the sky. The ship drifted through a void, its direction uncertain. The navigator turned to dead reckoning, measuring distance by knots, hourglasses, and instinct, but every mile felt like guesswork, every gust of wind a possible mistake. Cloudy nights also carried a weight of superstition. Pirates whispered that storms brewed behind such veils, waiting to strike. A sudden silence in the wind, or the distant rumble of thunder, made men uneasy. Some believed spirits or phantom ships sailed hidden in the darkness, revealed only when lightning tore open the clouds. But skilled navigators learned to adapt. They studied the patterns of waves, noting whether swells rolled from east or west. They smelled the air for hints of land carried on the wind. They watched the rigging, listened to the sails, and trusted the compass when the sky gave nothing. Pirates who survived such nights grew sharper, more attuned to the whispers of the sea itself. Imagine a pirate ship adrift beneath a sky so dark that not a single star glimmers above. The crew is hushed, their eyes straining into the blackness. Somewhere, unseen, reefs may lurk. Somewhere, a merchant vessel may be sailing, equally blind. And above them, behind the heavy clouds, the faithful stars still shine but hidden, as if testing the courage of those below. For pirates, cloudy nights were reminders of humility. The heavens could guide them, but they could also abandon them, leaving only instinct and resolve to carry the ship forward. For all their roughness, pirates were men of imagination. The stars above them were not just tools of navigation, they were also symbols, omens, and storytellers in the night sky. Around the flickering glow of a lantern, with the sea stretching black and endless around them, pirates wove tales about the constellations that guided their ships. Some stars were seen as lucky signs. A bright shooting star might be taken as a promise of treasure ahead, or a warning of battle to come. Constellations, like Orion, the great hunter, were said to watch over brave sailors, while the Pleiades, the seven sisters, were seen as reminders of home, their soft cluster glowing like lanterns hung in the heavens. But not all stories were comforting. Pirates feared nights when the stars seemed to blur or fade, whispering that such skies foretold disaster. Some believed that certain constellations could vanish altogether if a ship was cursed. Others claimed that ghostly lights, faint glimmers over the waves, were the spirits of lost sailors, leading the living astray. Different crews carried different traditions, drawn from the lands where they came. A sailor from Africa might tell of ancestral spirits walking among the stars. A Spaniard might share Catholic legends of saints watching from above. An Englishman might recall tales of dragons hidden in the constellations. On pirate decks, these stories mingled into a patchwork of beliefs, each adding to the mystery of the night. The stars gave pirates a sense of connection to something greater. While they lived dangerous, lawless lives, the heavens above reminded them that their stories were part of an older, larger tale one told since the dawn of sailing. The constellations were eternal, and for men who faced death daily, eternity was both a comfort and a haunting thought. Imagine the ship rocking gently under a sky alive with glittering fire. The navigator checks his instruments, but the crew whispers about what they see: heroes, spirits, omens of fortune and doom. To the pirate, the stars were never just points of light. They were teachers, guides, and companions in a world where the line between myth and reality was as thin as the horizon itself. When the heavens were hidden and the compass uncertain, pirates turned to another guide, the voice of the sea itself. Two men who spent their lives upon the water, the sound of waves carried secrets, telling them more than any map could reveal. Each wave had its own rhythm, its own direction. By listening carefully, a skilled sailor could sense whether the swell came from the east, the west, or from the open ocean far beyond. The sea rolled like a giant drum, beating out patterns shaped by wind and current. Pirates learned to read these sounds, letting the music of the water tell them where they drifted in the night. Near shorelines, the song of the sea changed. Waves broke faster and shallower, crashing against reefs and rocks with a sharper tone. In deeper waters, they rolled slower, lower, like a steady breathing. Even without sight, pirates could hear the difference. Many a ship was saved in the dark because a sailor caught the faint roar of surf ahead her, warning that land or danger lay near. At night, with the crew hushed and lanterns dimmed, the sound of the waves was amplified. The ocean spoke louder in the stillness, carrying clues of wind, current, and hidden coasts. Pirates who trained their ears could almost see through the noise, shaping their course with nothing but sound and instinct. Of course, this method was not perfect. Storms could confuse the sea's voice, making it roar from every direction at once. But in calmer hours, when the night was deep and the stars gave no answer, pirates trusted the waves. Imagine lying awake on a pirate ship's deck, the planks beneath you swaying gently, the water slapping softly against the hull. To the untrained ear, it is only noise. To the pirate navigator, it is a language in ocean, whispering, guiding, and warning through the night. Long before the first sight of land, pirates often smelled it. The ocean carries scents like whispers, drifting across miles of open water. To a seasoned crew, the faintest change in the air could signal what lay ahead. In the middle of the sea, the air smelled of salt and nothing more clean, sharp, and endless. But near islands, the wind carried new fragrances, the earthy musk of mangroves, the sweetness of tropical flowers, or the damp green smell of jungles after rain. To a pirate ship sailing through the night, such scents were as clear as a lighthouse, warning that land was close even if no shadow yet showed on the horizon. Smoke was another clue. If the wind shifted just right, pirates could catch the faint trace of fires, villagers cooking their evening meals, or patrol ships burning lanterns on distant decks. A sudden whiff of wood smoke in the night could mean danger or opportunity. The sea itself changed smells, too. Shallow waters near reefs or sandbanks gave off a different temps, earthy and mineral, compared to the deep water scent of the open ocean. A good navigator could tell by scent alone whether his ship approached a safe harbor or a deadly shoal. Of course, such methods required patience and sharp senses. In the dark of night, when every creak of the ship was louder than usual, the men strained their noses as much as their ears and eyes. They learned to trust these faint hints, for often the smell of land arrived long before sight confirmed it. Picture a pirate leaning against the rail, the sea breeze cool on his face. He breathes deeply, catching a faint sweetness that does not belong to the salt air. He smiles quietly, knowing what it means. Land is near, perhaps a place to hide, resupply, or raid. For pirates, the smell of the sea was more than air, it was a compass of its own, carrying messages on the wind through the dark. Even in the darkest hours, the sky was never truly empty. Pirates learned to read its faint shades and subtle glows, using the heavens as a silent messenger. The color of the night sky told them more than many realized, spoke of weather, direction, and the coming of dawn. On clear nights, the sky above the horizon sometimes held a faint silver band, a glow where the moonlight and stars met the water. If the glow spread wide and pale, it meant the night would remain calm. But if the horizon darkened to a heavy grey, pirates knew clouds were gathering, perhaps bringing rain or a storm. The eastern sky was the most telling. Hours before sunrise, it began to change, shifting from black to deep blue, then to the faintest greenish hue. Pirates kept careful watch for this first sign of dawn, for it promised relief. The stars would fade, but light would return to guide them. Many crews planned their moves around this moment, timing raids to strike just before the grey of morning broke. The sky's colors also warned of danger. A reddish glow at dusk or dawn was often a sailor's omen. Red sky at night, sailor's delight. Red sky in morning, sailor's warning. Pirates repeated such sayings, half science and half superstition, believing the sky's colors foretold weather. A fiery morning horizon could mean storms ahead, while a soft golden glow at sunset gave hope of calm seas. For pirates who lived by their senses, the sky was a living chart. Its colors were subtle, fleeting, easy to miss, but for those who paid attention, they offered guidance that no compass could match. Imagine a pirate on the night watch, leaning against the helm as the horizon begins to pale. The black fades to indigo, then to the soft shimmer of blue. He knows dawn is near, and with it, new choices. Whether to continue their course in daylight or hide in a cove before patrols can spot them. The sky, in its silent shifting shades, has given its answer. For pirates, the colors of the heavens were not just beauty, they were warnings, promises, and signs to steer by in the endless night. On the darkest of nights, when no stars broke through the clouds and the moon was hidden away, the ocean itself sometimes came alive with light. Pirates called it the sea on fire, a glowing, sparkling trail that followed their ships as if the water carried its own stars. This was bioluminescence, the mysterious glow of tiny creatures stirred by the waves. To weary sailors, it was a wonder. The ship's wake shimmered with greenish-blue sparks, each crest of foam glowing as if lit from within. Even the spray thrown up by the bow seemed to sparkle like molten jewels. When dolphins leaped alongside, they too blazed with streaks of light, as if ghostly spirits were racing the ship through the waves. For pirates, this strange glow was both comfort and curse. On one hand, it gave them visibility in otherwise impenetrable darkness. The light outlined the edges of the waves, helping them sense movement and direction. Some believed the glowing waters guided them, offering protection when the heavens above were hidden. But there was danger in beauty. A ship that glowed brightly in a trail of bioluminescent foam could be seen from miles away. To merchants or naval patrols, it was like a lantern lit upon the sea, betraying the pirate's position. Many crews cursed these glowing waters, praying for calm seas to hide their movements. Superstitions grew around the phenomenon. Some pirates swore the glowing lights were souls of drowned sailors, forever drifting in the deep. Others believed it was a blessing from the sea itself, proof that the ocean watched over them. Whatever the truth, the glow left a mark on every man who saw it. Picture a silent night, the ship rocking gently as the sea glows beneath it, every wave crest flashing like starlight spilled into the water. The crew falls quiet, staring into the luminous path stretching out behind them. In that moment, the ocean itself seems alive, a companion in their endless journey through the dark. For pirates, bioluminescence was proof that the night was never truly empty, that even in darkness, light could be found, dancing in the waves. On a pirate ship, the wind was more than a force that filled the sails. It was a messenger, carrying news of what lay ahead. Skilled sailors learned to feel its changes, to sense the slightest shift in direction or warmth, and to read in it the secrets of the night. A sudden cool breeze drifting over the deck often meant land was near. Islands, forests, or mountains altered the air, cooling it as it passed over them. Pirates on night watch would lift their faces to the wind, testing it against their skin, knowing that a faint chill could be the first sign of safety or the first hint of hidden reefs. Temperature shifts also warned of storms. A warm, heavy air that pressed down on the crew meant weather was building. Men spoke of the sea holding its breath before a squall. Moments later, the sky might explode with lightning and wind. Pirates respected these subtle signs, for ignoring them could mean being caught unprepared in the fury of the sea. The direction of the wind told its own story. A steady trade wind could carry a ship smoothly along for days, but when it faltered or shifted suddenly, it unsettled the crew. Pirates counted on these winds to patrol the Caribbean, moving quickly from one hunting ground to the next. A change in the breeze could alter their fate, sending them toward treasure or straight into the arms of a naval frigate. At night, when the senses of sight were limited, the wind became even more important. Pirates would tie strips of cloth to the rigging, watching how they fluttered in the lantern glow, or simply wet a finger and hold it aloft to feel which way the air moved. Imagine a still night suddenly broken by a cool gust sweeping across the deck. The men glance at each other, some smiling, others wary. The wind has shifted, and with it their course and perhaps their destiny. For pirates, the wind was not invisible. It was a guide, a warning, and sometimes a whisper of fortune on the restless sea. When the stars were hidden, when the waves gave no warning, and when the wind offered only silence, pirates sometimes looked to a different guide: the birds of the sea. Seabirds lived in close rhythm with the ocean, their movements tied to the cycles of land and water. To watch their flight was to glimpse a map written in feathers. During the day, pirates noticed flocks of gulls circling above shoals or islands. At night, they listened for the faint cries of birds returning to their roosts. Such sounds carried across the dark water, hinting that land was closer than their eyes could see. Some birds, like frigate birds and terns, rarely strayed far from shore. When pirates spotted them gliding over the ship, they knew an island must be near. Others hunted only at certain times, rising at dawn or dusk. By learning their habits, navigators could estimate the hour even without stars or hourglasses. But the signs were not always easy to read. A single bird could be a wanderer blown off course by storms, yet flocks rarely lied. Pirates trusted the patterns of wings in the sky as they trusted the stars above. In the silence of the night watch, a sudden rush of wings overhead could stir the crew with hope. Landfall was near, perhaps a hidden cove to anchor in, or a settlement to raid. These feathered guides also fed superstition. Some pirates believed seabirds carried the souls of drowned sailors, circling the waters to warn or bless the living. To harm such a bird was considered bad luck, in an invitation for storms or shipwrecks. Others whispered that gulls followed ships not for food, but for fate, leading them toward their destiny. Imagine a pirate standing at the bow, straining his ears in the dark. A faint cry drifts from above, carried on the wind. He smiles, knowing what it means. The sea has given them another clue, a promise that land waits nearby. For pirates, the flight of birds was yet another voice in the chorus of the sea, a living compass in the endless night. For pirates, the night was more than a time to travel. It was a weapon. Darkness cloaked their sails, muffled their movements, and turned the vast ocean into a hunting ground where shadows swallowed everything. To strike under cover of night was one of the boldest and most effective tactics in a pirate's arsenal. Merchant ships often anchored or drifted with reduced watch at night. Crewmen, weary from long hours in the sun, slept deeply in their hammocks. Lanterns burned low, casting only weak halos of light on the deck. To such ships, the ocean seemed quiet, empty. But pirates knew this was the perfect moment to close in. They trimmed their sails to catch only enough wind for silent movement. Orders were whispered, boots were muffled, and even the clatter of weapons was dampened. A pirate ship in the night moved like a shadow, its outline blending into the horizon. Without the moon, even sharp-eyed lookouts often failed to see danger until it was too late. By the time the merchant crew awoke, the pirate vessel was already alongside, grappling hooks thrown, and cutlasses flashing in the lantern glow. Surprise was everything. A ship caught at night often surrendered without a fight, knowing they had no chance to escape. But this strategy carried risks. Navigating blindly near another vessel could lead to collision, tearing sails or snapping masts. One wrong move, and the ambushers could find themselves exposed. Still, the rewards outweighed the dangers. A single successful night raid could yield chests of gold, barrels of rum, and cargo worth a fortune. Picture it, the sea is black as tar, the only sound the gentle slap of water against wood. A faint shape lies ahead, a merchant ship at rest. Silent as ghosts, the pirates glide forward, their ship a predator in the dark. In moments, the prey will awake to chaos, and the night will belong to the hunters. For pirates, the darkness was more than a cover. It was their ally, their disguise, and often their greatest advantage. When darkness wrapped the sea, pirates had to move carefully. Noise could carry far across still waters, and light could betray their position to watchful eyes. Yet ships still needed coordination. Orders had to be given, warnings shared, and maneuvers executed. To solve this, pirates relied on signals and silent communication, a hidden language of light, sound, and gesture. One of the simplest methods was the lantern code. By raising, lowering, or briefly shading lanterns, crews could signal messages across short distances without shouting. A single flicker might mean all clear, while two flashes could warn of danger. But lanterns had to be used sparingly. One careless glow might be spotted by a target ship, undoing hours of stealth. Gestures were equally important. Pirates used hand signals and body language in the moonlight, pointing to sails, drawing invisible circles for turning, or tapping the deck to call for silence. Experienced crews needed few words. They moved like a single body, guided by instinct and trust. Sometimes, even sound became a tool. A low whistle or the tap of a rope against wood could carry instructions that only the crew recognized. In strong winds, a sharp knock on the hull might travel better than a shouted command. These sounds, hidden in the natural noise of the ship, were invisible to outsiders. This secret language was especially crucial during night raids, when timing decided everything. Grappling hooks had to be thrown at the same moment, sails adjusted in perfect rhythm, and boarding parties coordinated without warning their prey. A single mistaker, loud shout, a dropped tool, a lantern uncovered to some good, alert the enemy and turn stealth into disaster. Imagine a pirate ship drifting toward its target in moonlight. The captain raises his hand, and without a word, the sails are trimmed. A lantern flickers once, and the men prepare ropes and weapons. No voices disturb the night. Only the sea speaks, while the pirates communicate in silence, bound by signals only they understand. For pirates, words were dangerous at night. Silence was safety, and their secret signals turned the darkness into an ally that spoke only to them. As dangerous as merchants could be, it was the naval patrols that haunted pirate dreams. These ships were larger, faster, and bristling with cannons designed specifically to hunt down outlaws of the sea. To encounter one by day was risky enough, but at night it could mean disaster. Pirates had to master the art of disappearing into the dark, outsmarting the hunters who prowled the waters. The first rule was silence. Lanterns were shuttered, fires extinguished, and even voices hushed. A pirate ship at night became almost invisible, a dark shape blending with the horizon. If patrol lights flickered in the distance, the crew froze, waiting as the enemy passed like shadows in the gloom. The second rule was wind and sails. Pirates often shortened their canvas, slowing their speed to let patrols drift by unnoticed. At times, they would slip close to the shoreline, hugging reefs or small islands where larger naval ships dared not sail. The sea itself became their shield, and shallow waters their refuge. Another tactic was deception. Pirates sometimes flew false flags in the moonlight, posing as harmless traders. At night, even a trained naval lookout could mistake them for what they pretended to be until it was too late. Clever captains also used the dark to their advantage, steering in wide arcs to trick pursuers into chasing phantoms, while the real ship vanished into the black horizon. But even with cunning, the danger was real. Naval ships often traveled in pairs, lanterns lit, scanning the seas with sharp eyes. One slip, one careless sound, and the pirates could find themselves outgunned and outnumbered. Many a pirate vessel was lost to the cannons of a patrol, discovered despite all stealth. Picture a tense night at sea. The pirate ship drifts silently, sails trimmed, every man holding his breath. On the horizon, lanterns glow a patrol sweeping the waters. The pirates crouch in the shadows, listening to the groan of timbers, praying the sea keeps their secret. Minutes pass like hours. Then, slowly, the lights fade, the danger drifts away, and the pirates breathe again. For men who lived outside the law, Avoiding patrols was survival. Night was their ally, but only if they moved with patience, discipline, and the cunning of shadows. For all their daring raids and bold escapes, pirates knew that sometimes the wisest choice at night was not to sail at all, but to hide. The Caribbean and other pirate haunts were dotted with secluded coves, mangrove channels, and narrow inlets, places invisible to most maps, but known well to those who lived by stealth. Under cover of darkness, pirates guided their ships into these secret harbors, anchoring where no patrol could easily find them. These coves were often treacherous to reach. Sharp reefs guarded their entrances, shallow waters threatened to ground a careless ship, and dense vegetation cloaked their outlines. To an unskilled navigator, they were death traps, but to pirates, they were sanctuaries. Many crews memorized these hiding spots, or passed their knowledge from one ship to another, building a secret geography of safe havens. Once anchored in such a cove, pirates extinguished every light. The ship lay motionless, blending into the shadows of the cliffs and trees. The crew moved quietly, securing ropes, lowering sails, and preparing for silence. Only the faint smell of tar and salt betrayed their presence, while patrol ships sailed blindly past in the moonlight. Hidden coves were more than shelters, they were workshops and camps. Pirates used them to repair sails, scrape barnacles from the hull, mend weapons, or simply rest after a long chase. Some coves became infamous gathering spots, where crews divided treasure or swapped news of merchant routes. But these secret harbors also carried risk. If discovered, there was no easy escape. A patrol blocking the narrow exit could trap an entire crew. Pirates who hid in coves relied on secrecy above all else, the hope that the sea would guard their hiding place as fiercely as they did. Imagine a moonless night, the ship nestled between high cliffs, water lapping softly against its hull. The crew rests in weary silence, hammocks swaying gently. Outside, the ocean waits, filled with danger. But here, for a few precious hours, the pirates feel safe, hidden in the arms of the land. For pirates, hidden coves were more than places on a map. They were lifelines, secret havens where darkness not only protected them but embraced them. For all the advantages night gave to pirates, it also carried one of their greatest fears: shipwreck. In the darkness, reefs were invisible, shoals lay hidden just beneath the waves, and rocky coasts loomed like shadows waiting to tear a ship apart. One mistake in judgment, one misread current, and a pirate vessel could be splintered before dawn. The Caribbean was especially treacherous. Coral reefs stretched for miles, their jagged teeth lying just below the surface. At night, when the stars were hidden or the moon gave little light, pirates relied on instinct, the sound of waves, or the faint smell of land. But even the best navigator could be deceived. The sea was unforgiving, and many pirate ships ended their journeys not in battle, but on unseen rocks in the dark. Storms made the danger worse. A sudden squall could drive a ship off course, pushing it toward reefs or cliffs, With sails straining and the deck awash in rain, the crew could barely see one another, let alone the coast. Cries of warning were often drowned by thunder, and by the time land was sighted, it was too late. The aftermath of a wreck was grim. Treasure, supplies, and weapons could be lost in moments. Survivors might swim ashore, but stranded on hostile coasts, they faced starvation or capture. Two pirates who lived outside the law, there was no rescue ship, coming only the ocean's cold indifference. Stories of shipwrecks haunted pirate lore. Men spoke of ghostly hulks half buried on reefs, their masts broken, their decks silent but for the gulls. Some said these wrecks carried curses, warning all who sailed too close. Others whispered that the treasures of the drowned lay scattered on the seafloor, guarded by spirits of the dead. Imagine a pirate ship racing silently through a moonless night, the crew tense as breakers roar ahead. Too late, the lookout cries out. The hull shudders with splinters, and the sea pours in. In the darkness, men leap into the waves as the ship tilts, her black flag sinking beneath the foam. For pirates, the sea gave life and fortune, but at night it could just as easily claim both. Shipwreck was the silent predator of the dark, feared more than any enemy with a sword. Few names stirred fear on the seas like Blackbeard, with his towering frame, wild eyes, and thick beard braided with slow-burning fuses. He was the nightmare of every merchant captain. But beyond his fearsome appearance, Blackbeard was also a master of using the night as his battlefield. He understood that darkness was not just cover, but theatre. As his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, closed in under moonlight, Blackbeard sometimes ordered lanterns hung in strange patterns, making his vessel appear larger or closer than it really was. Other times, he sailed in total darkness, slipping silently through the waves until his prey awoke to the sight of his looming hull. One of his most chilling tactics was psychological warfare. On moonless nights, he would weave slow matches ropes soaked in saltpeter into his beard and light them before a raid. As he approached his target, smoke curled around his face, sparks glowing in the dark like the eyes of a demon. Two terrified sailors, it seemed not a man but a phantom had come for them. Many surrendered without a fight. But Blackbeard was not reckless. He used the night with precision, knowing when to strike and when to vanish. Naval records speak of him slipping past patrols under the cover of clouds, or running blockades by hugging the shoreline in darkness. His cunning made him unpredictable, as if the sea itself conspired to hide him. Yet the same darkness that aided him also led to his downfall. In 1718, cornered near Ocracoke Island, he fought his final battle at dawn after a night of tense maneuvering. Surrounded, outgunned, he could no longer melt into the shadows. The legend of Blackbeard ended with the rising sun, but his mastery of night tactics lived on in every tale whispered by sailors. Imagine the terror of a merchant crew at anchor, lanterns low, when a shadow slides silently beside them. A figure appears, his beard wreathed in sparks, his eyes burning through the smoke. In that moment, the sea itself seems haunted. This was the power of Blackbeard's night maneuvers, the blending of fear, darkness, and cunning into a weapon as sharp as any blade. In the world of pirates, where most crews were rough men hardened by the sea, the names Anne Bonny and Mary Read stood out like fire against the night. Both disguised themselves as men at times, both fought as fiercely as any sailor, and both carved their names into the history of piracy. But what truly made them unforgettable was their courage in the dark, when the sea was at its most dangerous. Anne Bonny, fiery and fearless, was said to have prowled the decks at night with pistols strapped to her waist, urging the crew to stay sharp. She had no patience for cowards. When shadows thickened around the ship, she was often the one reminding her companions that darkness was not to be feared, it was their ally. Mary Read, equally bold, shared her strength in battle. Legends tell of her boarding enemy ships under the cover of night, sword flashing in the glow of lantern light, her disguise falling away as she fought with unmatched fury. Sailors who expected to face weary men instead met the surprise of a woman cutting through the chaos, as relentless as the storm itself. Together, Anne and Mary were symbols of defiance, women who refused the roles society tried to chain them into. At night, their presence became a kind of fire for their crews, a reminder that even in shadows, courage burned brightly. Their names spread across taverns and ports, whispered with equal measures of admiration and fear. Though their careers were brief, their stories lingered. Some say that during night raids, it was an S voice and Mary S blade that struck fear as much as the black flag itself. To face pirates was terrible enough, but to face pirates led by women who fought with such unyielding will was something sailors never forgot. Picture a moonlit deck, grappling hooks, securing a prize ship, the air thick with smoke and shouts. Amid the clash of steel, Anne and Mary fight side by side, their courage gleaming brighter than the lantern flames. In the dark of night, they proved that fear could be broken, that legends could be written not only by men, but by women who dared to seize the sea. Unlike the flamboyant Blackbeard or the fiery Anne Bonny, Captain William Kidd built his legend not only through battle, but through cunning. Known as both pirate and privateer, Kidd understood the value of secrecy at sea. His genius lay in creating hidden routes under cover of night, paths that allowed him to slip between patrols and vanish when the world thought him cornered. Kidd often sailed along coastlines, where the dark silhouettes of cliffs and forests masked his ship. He knew the tides and currents that pulled at hidden coves, the shoals where larger vessels dared not follow. By day, these routes were dangerous. By night, they were invisible to all but the most experienced navigator. Yet Kidd trusted his knowledge and the loyalty of his crew. Rumors spread that he marked these secret paths in ways no ordinary sailor could read. Some claimed he cut notches into coastal trees. Others whispered he buried tokens along beaches to guide him back. Most believed he carried maps written in a code only he understood, charts that led not only to safe passage, but also to buried treasure. It was during these night journeys that Kidd's legend grew. Merchants spoke of ships vanishing into the dark, chased by Kidd's vessel, never to be seen again. Naval captains cursed his ability to escape, as if the sea itself had opened hidden doors just for him. Even his eventual downfall, captured and executed in London, did not erase the stories of his secret night routes. Paths so clever that some treasure hunters still chase them centuries later. Imagine Kidd at the helm, lantern covered, his eyes scanning the faint outline of a coastline under starlight. He gives the order to steer sharply toward waters no sane captain would enter. The ship glides silently through reefs and shadows, emerging hours later into open, sea-safe, unseen and untouchable. For Kidd, the night was not only concealment, it was a labyrinth he alone could master, turning the ocean into a secret map of his own making. If Blackbeard was terror, and Captain Kidd was cunning, then Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart, was discipline and precision. A Welshman turned pirate, Roberts became one of the most successful raiders in history, capturing hundreds of ships. Unlike many of his peers, he was not reckless. He treated navigation as an art, and the night sky as his trusted ally. Roberts understood that stealth and timing mattered as much as firepower. He used the cover of night to position his ships with uncanny accuracy. When the sun rose, his prey often found themselves surrounded, escape already cut off. Other times, Roberts struck just before dawn, catching merchant captains in their most vulnerable hour, half asleep, unprepared, and blinded by the dim light. What set Roberts apart was his strictness. While many pirate crews lived in chaos, drinking and brawling, Roberts demanded order. His men were expected to obey signals instantly, especially during nighttime maneuvers where a single mistake could reveal their position. Lantern codes, whispered commands, and the careful trimming of sails all were carried out with military-like precision. Roberts also relied heavily on his navigators. He valued skilled seamen above brute force, often sparing captured sailors if they could read the stars or chart hidden waters. His own knowledge of navigation was formidable, and he used it to sail routes that others avoided, appearing where no one expected him. Legends tell of Roberts sailing boldly into harbors under the cover of night, seizing ships before anyone on shore realized he was there. Some said his confidence came from the stars themselves, that he could read them as easily as a man reads words on a page. Imagine his sleek black ship gliding silently through the night. Sails trimmed perfectly, crew hushed, every movement deliberate. The horizon glows faintly with dawn, and there, like a shadow waiting to strike Robert's vessel, reveals itself. The enemy never stood a chance. For Black Bart, the night was not chaos but order. It was a stage on which he orchestrated his victories, proving that piracy could be as precise and disciplined as any navy. For every tale of cunning and conquest at night, there were others filled with tragedy. The sea, indifferent to courage or greed, often claimed pirate ships in the very darkness they tried to master. Some of the most haunting stories of piracy are not battles won, but shipwrecks suffered in the night. One of the greatest dangers was the reefs of the Caribbean. Sharp and invisible after sunset, they tore through holes like blades. Stories spread of ships vanishing on moonless nights, their lanterns winking out as wood splintered and men cried in the dark. Survivors, if there were any, washed ashore at dawn with little more than fragments of plunder clutched in their hands. Even legends were not spared. Blackbeard's fleet suffered wreckage off North Carolina, when shifting sands and shallow shoals dragged ships to their deaths. Captain Kidd, too, was said to have lost vessels in treacherous waters while fleeing under cover of night. For lesser-known pirates, wrecks often went unrecorded, whole crews erased, their ships resting in silence beneath the waves. The mystery of such wrecks bred superstition. Sailors spoke of ghost ships seen drifting at night, silent hulks glowing faintly, said to be the spirits of drowned pirates doomed to sail forever. Others whispered that the treasures of sunken ships still glittered on the seafloor, guarded by curses or restless souls. But beyond myth, the lesson was clear. Even the boldest navigator could falter when the sea hid her secrets. Night navigation was power, but it was also peril. The same darkness that concealed pirates from their enemies also concealed the traps of the deep. Imagine a quiet night, stars hidden behind heavy clouds, a pirate ship pressing forward with the wind. Suddenly, a terrible sound, the grinding of wood against coral, the snap of timbers, the rush of water flooding in. Lanterns fall, screams echo, and in minutes the proud vessel is gone, swallowed by the sea. These wrecks were reminders to every crew. Fortune could turn to ruin in a heartbeat. The night gave pirates their edge, but it could also be their undoing. For pirates, navigation was never guesswork alone. Beneath the superstition and instinct lay the practical science of latitude and longitude, the invisible grid that divided the world's oceans. To master it meant freedom. To misunderstand it meant doom. Latitude was the simpler of the two. It measured how far north or south a ship sailed, based on the angle of the sun or stars above the horizon. Pirates could find it with tools like the astrolabe, the cross-staff, or even careful observation of Polaris, the North Star. A navigator who knew his latitude could trace invisible lines across the globe, confident that he was not drifting too far from familiar seas. But longitude east to west was another story. In the 17th and 18th centuries, longitude was the unsolved riddle of the oceans. Without accurate clocks, sailors could only guess how far they had traveled from one port to another. Pirates, like all mariners of their time, struggled with this uncertainty. A miscalculation of longitude could place them hundreds of miles off course, lost in hostile waters or far from their prey. Still, pirates adapted. They combined dead reckoning with rough charts, using their sense of speed, distance, and direction to sketch their position. They also relied on memory where islands lay, where currents flowed, where merchant ships were most likely to pass. In this way, they created their own mental maps, less precise than scientific charts, but deadly effective for ambush and escape. Latitude gave them a measure of confidence. Longitude forced them to improvise. The sea was not carved with borders, but pirates learned to navigate its invisible grid with resourcefulness. Imagine a navigator at night, squinting at the stars, marking angles on a wooden staff while the ship creaks beneath him. His captain waits impatiently for an answer. Are they too far north? Too far west? The navigator runs his fingers across a worn map, shakes his head, and points to the horizon. There, somewhere ahead, lies their quarry or their doom. For pirates, latitude and longitude were not abstract numbers. They were the difference between treasure and tragedy, between sailing boldly into the unknown and being swallowed by it. If latitude gave pirates a measure of certainty, longitude was their torment. In the age of sail, no mariner pirate or admiral had a reliable way to measure east-west position at sea. This longitude problem haunted every voyage, and for pirates who relied on stealth and speed, it was especially dangerous. The difficulty lay in time. To calculate longitude, a navigator needed to know the exact time at a fixed location, such as a home port, and compare it to the local time at sea, measured by the sun or stars. Each hour of difference marked 15 degrees of longitude. Simple in theory, but impossible in practice without a clock that could keep perfect time on a rolling, salt-soaked ship. Clocks of the era lost or gained minutes every day, their pendulums disrupted by the motion of waves. For pirates, who could not afford the latest instruments, even if they existed, precise longitude was nothing more than a dream. They guessed, they estimated, and they hoped. This uncertainty often forced pirates into dangerous choices. To avoid getting lost in the wide Atlantic, they hugged coastlines, memorizing landmarks and harbors. Others relied on captured navigators from merchant or naval vessels, stealing not only charts but also the knowledge of those who had sailed the same waters before. But even with these tricks, errors were inevitable. A ship thought to be near Jamaica might find itself hundreds of miles off, drifting into Spanish patrols or barren seas with no chance of resupply. Tales spread of pirates vanishing forever, not from battle, but from the silent trap of misjudged longitude. It was not until much later, long after the golden age of piracy, that the invention of the marine chronometer finally solved the riddle. But for Blackbeard, Kidd, Roberts, and countless nameless crews, longitude remained the sea's cruel joke, an invisible line they could never quite hold. Picture a pirate navigator staring at his crude hourglass, knowing it drifts by minutes each day. His captain demands certainty, but the truth is grim. The ocean gives no answers. They sail on, guided by instinct, by courage, and by luck. For pirates, longitude was the unsolvable riddle of their world. A shadow on every night's journey, reminding them that mastery of the sea always came with mystery. For all their daring and defiance, pirates were not born navigators. Many came from poor backgrounds, with little education beyond the deck of a ship. Their true mastery of the seas often came not from books or academies, but from the men they captured. When a pirate ship overtook a merchant vessel, it was not just gold, silks, or barrels of rum that interested the crew. The most valuable prize was often the navigator himself. Merchant and naval navigators were trained to read the stars, to chart safe courses, and to plot routes known only to their employers. Pirates sometimes forced these men into service, threatening their lives until they agreed to guide the ship. Other times, they were treated well, promised shares of loot in exchange for their knowledge. Through these captured experts, pirates learned trade routes, secret harbors, and the tricks of advanced navigation. They discovered where merchant fleets were most vulnerable, how to avoid treacherous currents, and even how to anticipate seasonal winds that carried ships across the Atlantic. Each captured navigator was a living chart, a human compass more reliable than any stolen map. But pirates also learned by listening. Around campfires or over mugs of grog, they coaxed information from prisoners, sometimes through intimidation, sometimes through camaraderie. Sailors, eager to save their lives, revealed the patterns of merchant convoys or the positions of naval patrols. Pirates wove these scraps into their own body of knowledge, passing it from crew to crew like treasure more valuable than silver. This exchange of skill explains why pirate ships, often ragged and undermanned, could outmaneuver the best-armed navies. They blended raw courage with stolen expertise, creating a kind of pirate academy of the seas, built not on formal teaching but on survival, cunning, and the knowledge of their enemies. Imagine a captured navigator standing on a pirate deck at night, his fine coat stripped away, his instruments spread before him. The captain leans close, demanding a safe course through reefs, or the quickest path to a Spanish galleon. The man hesitates, but the stars above are unyielding, and soon his voice guides the ship forward into the dark. For pirates, knowledge was as much a weapon as a cutlass, and often the best knowledge came not from their own hands, but from the unwilling teachers they dragged aboard. If the compass and stars guided pirates through the night, then maps and charts were their secret treasures. More than gold, more than jewels, these fragile sheets of parchment could mean the difference between plunder and perdition. Most pirate maps were not elegant atlases, but stolen documents, torn from the cabins of captured merchantmen or seized from naval officers. They were smudged with ink, stained with salt, and patched with scraps of parchment. Yet in their lines and marks lay the hidden knowledge of coastlines, reefs, and shipping lanes. For pirates, charts were less about the wide oceans and more about the details of opportunity. They showed where merchant fleets passed, where colonial ports stored supplies, and where hidden bays might offer shelter. A single note scribbled on a margin, "Shallow reef, here or Spanish patrols frequent," was as valuable as any chest of coins. But pirates also distrusted charts. Many were outdated or deliberately misleading, meant to protect merchants from rivals. Some were so vague that entire islands appeared in the wrong place, leading crews into deadly traps. To make them useful, pirates relied on memory, gossip, and the observations of skilled navigators. The chart was not lit, was a suggestion, to be tested against the sea itself. Still, maps carried a kind of mystique. Tales of buried treasure gave rise to the image of the X marks the spot map, though in truth few pirates buried their plunder. More often, maps marked safe harbors, currents, and routes of escape. They were living documents, altered and updated as voyages unfolded, passed between crews as part of piracy's hidden lore. Imagine a pirate captain spreading a chart across a rough wooden table in the lantern glow. His fingers trace a coastline, tapping at a cove scribbled in the margin. Around him, the crew leans close, their eyes gleaming. To them, the map is not just paper, is a promise of prey, of safety, of survival. For pirates, charts were more than guides. They were stolen secrets, distilled knowledge of the seas, fragile enough to tear but powerful enough to change the fate of a ship. Beyond charts and instruments, pirates carried something far more valuable: memory. While official maps showed trade winds and coastlines, the true pirate world was built on whispered knowledge of secret routes, hidden passages through reefs, narrow channels between islands, and unmarked paths that allowed them to vanish into the night. These routes were rarely written down. Instead, they were passed from sailor to sailor, captain to crew, like an oral treasure map. A navigator who knew of a concealed channel in the Bahamas or a reef passage near Cuba held power as surely as a man with a sword. Such secrets were guarded fiercely, for once revealed, their magic could be lost to rivals or enemies. Pirates used these hidden paths for more than escape. They turned them into hunting grounds. By sailing through routes unknown to merchants, they could appear suddenly where ships felt safest, merging from behind islands or slipping across waters thought impassable. The element of surprise was as much a part of the route as the geography itself. Some secret passages were dangerous, navigable only in certain tides or under moonlight. A single error could dash a ship against coral or strand it in shallow waters. Yet pirates embraced the risk. To them, the danger of reefs was preferable to the certainty of capture by a naval patrol. The sea favored the bold, and those who knew her hidden ways reaped her rewards. Over time, these secret pirate routes became part of the lore of the Caribbean. Captains boasted of knowing passages that no map recorded. Sailors whispered of channels so narrow that a man could toss a stone from one side to the other, yet deep enough to carry a ship. Some said these routes were cursed, marked by wrecks of the unlucky. Others swore they were blessings of the sea, given only to those daring enough to claim them. Picture a pirate ship slipping through a mangrove-lined channel at night, the water glassy and still, the trees looming overhead. Lanterns are hidden, the crew hushed. Behind them, patrol ships search the open sea, unaware that their quarry has vanished into a secret path known only to outlaws. For pirates, secret routes were not lines on a map. They were lifelines. Mysteries of the sea shared only among those who lived outside the law-dark corridors through the ocean, carved by courage, chance, and legend. The night watch on a pirate ship was long and weary. Hours passed slowly as the sea rocked beneath the hull and the stars wheeled overhead. To keep awakened, To keep spirits steady, pirates often turned to the oldest companion of sailors everywhere, song. These were not gentle lullabies, but chants, shanties, and rhythms designed to match the labor of the crew. A steady chorus helped men haul ropes in unison, adjust sails in the dark, or keep time as they turned the hourglasses. The beat of voices rose and fell with the creak of wood and the hiss of waves, weaving music into the very motion of the ship. Some songs were bawdy and rough, full of laughter to break the monotony. Others carried the weight of longing verses about distant shores, sweethearts left behind, or dreams of treasure and freedom. At night, when danger lurked unseen, these songs became more than entertainment. They were anchors for the soul, keeping fear at bay and reminding the crew they were not alone. Shanty menselers with strong voices often led the chorus. Their role was vital, for rhythm meant efficiency, and efficiency meant survival. A well-timed chant could turn chaos into harmony, giving pirates the coordination they needed even in the blind dark. But not all songs were for work. Some were for courage. Pirates whispered of crews who sang softly during raids, their voices carrying across the waves as they approached a merchant ship. The sound unsettled their enemies, turning the pirates into ghostly choirs drifting out of the night. Imagine the deck of a pirate vessel in the small hours, lanterns dimmed, the crew gathered to pull at ropes. Their voices rise in unison, a rough chant echoing against the endless horizon. Above them, the stars shimmer. Below them, the sea rolls on. The song is not beautiful, but it is alive, binding the men together in rhythm, beating back the silence of the night. For pirates, songs were more than sound. They were a heartbeat in the darkness, a reminder that even in shadow and uncertainty, their voices could turn fear into strength. The moon was more than a lantern in the sky. It was a mystery, a power that pirates both respected and feared. Two men who lived their lives at sea, where every shadow carried risk. The phases of the moon became omens, woven into the fabric of superstition. A new moon, black and hidden, was often seen as lucky for raiding. Its darkness cloaked their ships, making them invisible to merchant lookouts and naval patrols. Crews whispered that the moonless night belonged to pirates, when their enemies were blind and the sea was theirs to command. But a full moon was another matter. Bright and watchful, it revealed every sail, every mast, every movement across the waves. Many pirates cursed the full moon, calling it the hunter's eye. Some refused to launch attacks when the moon was high, fearing that its light would betray them. Others believed it brought storms, that the silver glow stirred the seas and awakened ill fortune. There were deeper beliefs, too. Some sailors thought the moon could control not only tides but tempers, that men grew restless and reckless under its glare. Fights broke out more often on full moon nights, and captains sometimes kept a tighter rein on their crews during that time. Legends grew around the moon's power. Pirates claimed that seeing a halo around it foretold death on the next voyage. Others swore that if the moon was blood red, It meant betrayal among the crew. Even the way it rose clear and swift, or hidden behind clouds, was taken as a sign of the voyage to come. Imagine a pirate ship at anchor, the full moon casting its glow across the deck. Some men cross themselves, muttering prayers. Others whisper of curses. The captain, silent at the helm, studies the shining disk as if it were an enemy as dangerous as any man of war. For all their bravado, pirates could not escape the feeling that the moon watched them, judging their deeds in silence. For them, the moon was not just light. It was a presence, a force that shaped their nights at sea sometimes, blessing, sometimes curse, but never ignored. When the sun sank and the sea turned black, pirate life did not stop, simply changed its rhythm. The night brought dangers, but it also brought habits, rituals, and routines that shaped life aboard a ship. These small customs helped crews endure the long hours of darkness. The most common ritual was the changing of the watch. As the hourglass ran out, tired men climbed down from the rigging or left their posts at the helm, replaced by fresh sailors ready to guard the ship. It was a quiet but important ceremony, often marked with a few muttered words, a clap on the shoulder, or even a shared drink of water or rum. Passing the duty from one man to another was a reminder that the ship was never left unguarded. Some crews lit small, carefully shielded lanterns on deck, their glow hidden from distant eyes. Around these, men gathered to mend ropes, sharpen cutlasses, or play dice and cards in hushed voices. For others, the ritual was simply a story, told a tale of a raid, a ghost ship, or a memory of home. In the darkness, with only the sea as witness, such words carried a weight they lacked in daylight. Prayers were not uncommon, either. Despite their lawless lives, many pirates clung to bits of faith. A whispered prayer to Saint Elmo, guardian of sailors, or to the Virgin Mary for protection at sea, gave comfort against the uncertainty of the night. Some men carved charms or tied knots in cords, believing these small acts would guard them from storms or betrayal. And then there was rum, the pirate's constant companion. Shared in moderation, it warmed against the chill winds and soothed nerves frayed by the unknown. Too much, of course, led to quarrels, so wise captains kept the measure small at night, saving the heavier drinking for daylight victories. Imagine a deck lit by a faint lantern, the sea stretching silent beyond. A few men sit cross-legged, rolling dice in the shadows. Another sharpens his blade, the rasp of metal steady against the night. A sailor mutters a prayer under his breath, while the helmsman stares out at the horizon. These small rituals, ordinary, almost invisible, kept the crew bound together, carrying them through the endless hours until dawn. For pirates, nighttime rituals were more than habit. They were a shield against fear, a thread of order woven into the chaos of life at sea. On a pirate ship, every man had his duty the captain commanded. The quartermaster kept order, the gunners manned their cannons. But when night fell and the sea grew uncertain, no one was more important than the navigator. His skill was the difference between plunder and peril, survival and shipwreck. the navigator was often a man with unusual knowledge. Sometimes a former merchant sailor, sometimes a prisoner pressed into service. Unlike the rough crew who relied on muscle and daring, the navigator relied on calculation, patience, and a steady hand. His tools, compasses, hourglasses, staffs, and charts were as vital to the ship as cutlasses and pistols. At night, his role grew even heavier. The captain might roar commands and plan bold attacks, but the navigator decided whether the ship could even reach its prey. With the stars as his map and the sea as his canvas, he measured the distance, marked the course, and warned of reefs and shoals hidden in the dark. Without his guidance, the bravest captain could lead his crew straight to disaster. Pirates often treated navigators with a mix of respect and suspicion. They were valuable, but also vulnerable, too valuable to discard, too strange to fully trust. Some navigators were kept under close watch, especially if they had been captured. Others earned loyalty by proving their worth time and again, guiding ships safely through storms or delivering them to rich hunting grounds. The navigator's burden was immense. A mistake of a single degree might not show for hours until the crew realized they were hopelessly off course. At night, when the crew whispered of omens and curses, it was the navigator who bore the responsibility of proving the stars still spoke true. Imagine him on deck in the hush of midnight, instruments in hand, his face lit by the faint glow of a shuttered lantern. Around him, the sea is black and endless, the crew restless and watchful. He squints at the heavens, finds Polaris, and marks his angle. Then, with quiet confidence, he speaks, "Hold steady, we are on course." In that moment, the tension eases. The ship sails forward, carried not only by wind, but by trust. For pirates, the navigator was more than a sailor. He was the voice of certainty in the dark, the man who turned the vast unknown into a path they could follow. On a pirate ship, the navigator carried great responsibility, but with it came great peril. A single mistake in calculation could doom the entire crew, and pirates were not known for their patience when disaster struck. Punishments for navigational errors were often swift, harsh, and unforgiving. If a ship ran aground on hidden reefs, or if weeks passed without sight of their intended prize, suspicion quickly turned toward the navigator. Crewmen who risked their lives in raids were less tolerant of errors that wasted time or threatened survival. A navigator who lost his way in the night might find himself accused of incompetence or worse, treachery. The punishments varied. At times, the crew might strip the navigator of his position, replacing him with another sailor or even a prisoner believed to know the waters better. Some navigators were marooned abandoned on a deserted island with a small supply of food and water, left to die alone as the ship sailed away. Others were beaten, chained, or even executed if the crew believed their mistakes were deliberate. But not all outcomes were grim. Pirates were practical, and a skilled navigator was hard to come by. If his error was seen as honest or caused by conditions beyond his control, he might be spared, though under closer watch. Still, The shadow of failure always lingered over his post. Even the best could be undone by storms, currents, or the deception of faulty charts. Fear of punishment drove many navigators to work tirelessly, checking and rechecking their calculations, watching the stars with sleepless eyes. They knew that their fate was tied to every course they set, every decision they made in the dark. Imagine a tense moment after weeks at sea, supplies running low, the crew grumbling in anger. The captain glares at the navigator, demanding answers. Where are we? Where is the prize you promised? The man points to his charts, his hands shaking. If he is wrong, the crew's fury may fall on him before dawn. For pirates, discipline was survival, and mistakes could not be ignored. To navigate wrongly in the night was not just an error, was a crime against the ship itself. To stand at the helm of a pirate ship in the dead of night was to carry the weight of every life aboard. The wheel creaked under rough hands, the sails whispered overhead, and the ocean stretched out as a vast, unseen wilderness. From this post, a pirate saw the world in a way no other man could, caught between darkness and destiny. The helmsman's eyes strained into the void, searching for the faintest shimmer of starlight on the waves, or the distant glow of lanterns from another vessel. His ears caught every sound, the snap of canvas, the groan of timbers, the rhythm of water against the hull. In those hours, the sea spoke not in words, but in murmurs, and the helmsman was its listener. Fear and wonder mingled in equal measure. A shadow on the horizon might be an enemy ship or nothing but a trick of the mind. A sudden gust of wind could be salvation, carrying them toward fortune or disaster, driving them into reefs unseen. Every small choice of the wheel mattered. A turn too wide, and the course was lost. A turn too sharp, and the ship shuddered dangerously. But there was beauty, too. Alone at the helm, a pirate often felt a strange peace. The stars glittered overhead, endless and eternal, while the ship rocked steadily beneath his feet. In that silence, even hardened men found moments of reflection. Some thought of home, others of treasure, and a few dared to imagine a life beyond the black flag. Picture the helmsman's hands steady on the wheel, the crew dozing lightly around the deck. A lantern glows faintly, shuttered against the night. Ahead, only darkness stretches, but the ship glides forward with confidence. For that moment, the helmsman is master of the unseen path, guiding his brothers through the night like a shepherd leading a flock. For pirates, the helm was not just wood and rope, it was the heartbeat of the ship. And at night, the man who held it was both guardian and guide, steering not only a vessel, but the fragile hopes of all who sailed upon it. Of all the terrors that haunted pirates on the night sea, none were more chilling than the tales of ghost ships. In the darkness, where shadows danced on the waves and lanterns glimmered faintly in the distance, sailors swore they saw vessels that should not exist, phantoms drifting silently, doomed to sail forever. Ghost ships were said to appear without warning, their sails tattered, their decks empty, yet gliding smoothly over the waves, Some claimed they glowed faintly, as though lit from within by otherworldly fire. Others insisted they gave off no light at all, black silhouettes that seemed to materialize and vanish in the blink of an eye. To pirates, who lived by danger and death, such visions were omens not easily ignored. The most famous of these legends was the Flying Dutchman, a cursed ship said to roam the seas eternally, never able to make port. Pirates whispered that to glimpse it was a warning of disaster. Storms would rise, ships would wreck, and men who saw its spectral sails were marked by fate. But ghost ships did not always appear as strangers. Some sailors swore they saw the vessels of lost comrades, wrecked in storms or sunk in battle, returning to sail alongside the living. Lanterns flickering on the horizon might not belong to patrols or merchants, but to the dead, guiding all, luring them onward. Superstitions grew fierce around these visions. A lookout who cried ship ahead at night might be met with silence, the crew too fearful to confirm what he saw. Some captains ordered their men not to speak of ghostly sightings, believing that naming the phantom gave it power. Others claimed the only way to ward it off was to pour rum overboard as an offering to the sea. Imagine a moonless night, the waves calm, when suddenly a dark outline appears ahead. The crew stirs nervously. Lanterns are shaded, weapons readied. But as the ship draws closer, there is no sound, no crew, no life, only a hulking shadow that drifts silently past before dissolving into mist. The pirates stare in awe and dread, wondering if they have seen the future of their own souls. For men who lived so near death, the idea of ghost ships was never far from mind. Whether real or illusion, they reminded pirates that the sea was not only a place of treasure, and battle it was also a graveyard, and the dead still sailed its waters by night. For all their battles and hardships, pirates were dreamers too. On long night watches, when the sea rocked gently and the stars burned bright, many found themselves gazing upward, lost in thoughts of treasure. The sky itself seemed to hold promise's edge, star a coin of silver, each constellation a map to hidden fortune. Treasure was not only gold and jewels. Two men who lived rough lives, dreams of wealth, meant freedom. Freedom from hunger, freedom from toil, freedom to live as kings on distant shores. Under the endless canopy of stars, those dreams felt closer, as though the heavens whispered that somewhere, just beyond the horizon, a ship laden with riches awaited their claim. Pirates often told tales during these quiet hours. Around dim lanterns, they spun stories of Spanish galleons heavy with silver, of islands where emeralds lay in caves, of cursed chests buried beneath palm trees with maps marked by X. Some swore they had seen such riches, others swore they had lost them, but all believed that fortune lay within reach if only fate favored them. The stars themselves became part of the fantasy. A sailor might point to a glittering cluster and claim it marked the path to treasure. Another might trace the curve of a constellation and call it a key to riches hidden on land. In truth, The stars offered no such map, but in the minds of weary men, they became symbols of hope. Imagine a pirate stretched out on deck, staring at Orion's belt blazing overhead. The sea is calm, the night quiet, and for a moment he is not an outlaw but a dreamer. He pictures himself rich beyond measure, seated in a grand hall, or living on a quiet island with no need for the black flag. The stars twinkle back, indifferent yet eternal, as if holding the secret of his fate. For pirates, treasure was always just beyond reach, but in the silence of the night, with the sky alight above them, they allowed themselves to dream. And sometimes those dreams were brighter than any gold. While many raids were swift and silent, some nights exploded into chaos battles, fought in darkness, where fear, fire, and fury collided upon the waves. For pirates, these night clashes were among the most dangerous of all. The first challenge was visibility. Lanterns gave away positions, but without them, men could barely see friend from foe. Muskets fired blindly, their flashes lighting the decks in brief, terrifying bursts. Swords clashed in the dim glow of moonlight, sparks flying as steel struck steel. The sea itself became part of the confusion, rocking ships together, throwing men off balance as they fought. Pirates thrived on surprise, and at night, the suddenness of an attack was its own weapon. Boarding parties leaped from the shadows, shouting with ferocity, their voices meant to disorient as much as to strike fear. On some occasions, fires were set deliberately, flaming arrows or granados hurled to spread panic and light up the night. The glow of burning sails turned the sea into a hellish stage where every movement was cast in flickering light. But night battles carried risks even for victors. Confusion led to accident spirits striking their own comrades, or ships colliding and breaking masts. Smoke, thick and choking, blinded both sides. And when cannon roared in darkness, the recoil and chaos often caused more harm than precision. Still, for pirates, the gamble was worth it. A merchant ship taken at night had little chance to fight back. Surprise often forced a surrender before battle grew too fierce. Yet when crews resisted, the result was carnage, a desperate clash where only the boldest survived. Imagine two ships locked together under a pale moon. The water between them churns with foam as men swing across on ropes, pistols crack, blades ring, and shouts echo across the night. Lanterns sway, casting wild shadows as the battle rages. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence falls, one ship victorious, the other broken, its flag torn down. For pirates, night battles were chaos and opportunity woven together. In the dark, anything could happen, and it was in that uncertainty that they thrived. Not every night at sea ended in conquest. Sometimes, pirates found themselves outnumbered, outgunned, or pursued by relentless enemies. In those moments, survival depended not on strength, but on cunning and the cover of moonlight. The moon could betray pirates by revealing their sails, yet it could also become their unlikely ally. A skilled captain knew how to angle his ship so that its silhouette blended into the glowing horizon. By keeping the pale disk of the moon behind them, pirates could slip away, their ship's outline swallowed in brightness, while their pursuers searched blindly in the wrong direction. Sails were often adjusted to catch just enough wind for speed without raising suspicion. Lanterns were extinguished, decks hushed, and even weapons wrapped in cloth to prevent a single clatter from echoing across the sea. The crew moved like shadows, their fate balanced on silence. Sometimes, pirates relied on decoys, casting barrels or debris overboard, tricking patrols into following the false trail of a shipwreck while the real vessel fled. Others cut across dangerous reefs or shallow channels under moonlight, taking paths their heavier pursuers dared not risk. The same secret routes that once brought them to prey now became their salvation. Such escapes were tense, drawn-out affairs. Every creak of the ship felt too loud, every shift of the wind a threat. Hours stretched like days as pirates waited to see whether they had truly slipped free or whether cannons would roar behind them. Picture it, a pirate vessel racing silently across the water, sails gleaming faintly in silver light. Behind them, a patrol ship looms, its lanterns glowing like angry eyes. But slowly, the lights fade, swallowed by distance. The pirates exhale, grins spreading across their faces. The moon, once feared, has become their shield. For pirates, escape was as important as attack. Victory was nothing if it ended in capture. And under the moon's pale gaze, many crews found their freedom sliding quietly into the endless horizon, safe for another night. For pirates, the most welcome sight after a long night at sea was the breaking of dawn. When the first pale light crept across the horizon, it brought relief, hope, and the promise of another day survived. The transition was almost magical. The black sky softened to deep blue, then to the golden shimmer of morning. The stars faded, the moon sank, and the outlines of the sea returned. What had been hidden in Darkness Reef's islands, enemy sails suddenly stood clear. For men who had strained their eyes through the night, this was a gift. On deck, the mood shifted. The weary night watch, stiff with fatigue, finally handed over the wheel and lines to their comrades. Hammocks creaked as tired sailors collapsed into sleep, while fresh hands stretched and yawned in the growing light. The ship itself seemed to wake, its timbers groaning warmly as the sun touched its deck. Dawn also brought safety. The fear of hidden reefs and ghostly ships eased as the sea revealed its secrets. Even the threat of naval patrols felt less daunting in daylight, where a pirate could see his enemy coming and plan his escape. What the night concealed, the dawn restored. Yet dawn could also be a time of reckoning. Damage done under cover of darkness dawn sails, worn ropes, weary memoirs, laid bare for all to see. Captains inspected their ships, counting supplies, tallying spoils, and planning their next move. Victory or loss, terror or relief, the truth of the night was measured by the first rays of the sun. Imagine the deck of a pirate ship after a sleepless night. The men squint against the rising sun, faces lined with exhaustion but lit with quiet satisfaction. The sea glitters gold, calm once more, as if it had never held fear in its depths. For a moment, the pirates breathed freely, reminded that even the darkest night yields to light. For them, dawn was not just another day. It was a victory in itself, the proof that they had survived the night and lived to chase fortune once again. Though the age of piracy has long passed, the skills and methods pirates used to navigate the seas at night left a lasting mark. They were not scholars or explorers in the traditional sense, yet their survival depended on mastering the same challenges faced by the greatest navigators of history. In their own rough, resourceful way, pirates carried forward the art of reading the sea and sky. Pirates proved that navigation was not only for kings and navies. With stolen compasses, borrowed charts, and the wisdom of captured sailors, they turned knowledge into power. Their success showed how cunning and adaptability could rival formal training. Even outlaw crews could cross oceans, strike far from home, and return safely, guided by stars, currents, and instinct. Many of their techniques using birds as signs of land, listening to the sound of waves, reading the sky for omens were passed down from generations of sailors before them. Pirates added their own twists, blending superstition with science, turning secrecy into strategy, and building hidden networks of routes known only to those outside the law. The legacy of pirate navigation also lives in language. We still measure speed in knots, a practice rooted in throwing log lines overboard. We still speak of being on course or off course, ideas shaped by the nightly worries of sailors steering blind through darkness. Even the romantic image of pirates gazing at the stars connects us to the ancient truth that the sky was once the only map mankind could trust. Imagine a pirate ship gliding through the night, guided by little more than Polaris and a creaking compass. Those men could not have imagined satellites, GPS, or digital charts, yet their instincts, their courage, and their methods laid the groundwork for all who came after. For pirates, navigation was survival. For us, it is history. Their legacy is not just in treasure buried on islands, but in the story of how even the wildest outlaws found their way across the endless sea. The story of pirates at night is more than battles and plunder. It is a tale of men and women adrift on the great dark ocean, guided by stars, whispers of the wind, and the eternal rhythm of the sea. In the blackness, they found both fear and wonder reefs that threatened to swallow them, ghost ships that stirred their imaginations, and moonlight that betrayed or protected them. They were outlaws, yet they were also dreamers. With every watch, every chant, every glance at Polaris or the Southern Cross, they reminded themselves that they were not only chasing treasure, but also writing their place in history. The stars were their compass, the sea their stage, and the night their constant companion. Now, as we leave their world behind, picture the calm after a long voyage. The deck is quiet, the sails are still, the crew has drifted into sleep, hammocks swaying gently with the tide. Above them, the stars glow softly, eternal and unchanging. The moon casts a silver path across the waves, as if lighting the way home. Let the rhythm of the sea guide you to. Hear the soft lapping of the waves against the hull, the creak of wood, the sigh of wind in the rigging. The pirates are gone, but their voices linger, carried on the night breeze. They remind us that even in darkness there is always direction, always light, always a way forward. And so, our story ends where there so often began, beneath the moonlit seas, where shadows conceal both danger and dream. Rest now, as they once did, rocked by the ocean's cradle, under the endless watch of the stars.